We're live. Hi, everyone. I always get a shock when we go live. It shocks me every time. I need flashing lights. Hi, Barbara, and hello, Laurie. Great to see you here, Laurie. Barbara will be taking notes for us in the background, so it's good to see that Barbara's here. So we're here today for our Substack live preview of Speaker's Corner, which will come up a bit later in the week. I'm Jennifer Jones from Tracking Down the Family, and I'm your host for Speaker's Corner. And today I have two very well-known and very active members of the project community with me. We have Kathy Stone from Kathy's Corner and Kyla Bayang from Root Squad Roundup. Before we have a chat to them, I'll just there might be some that aren't really sure about Speaker's Corner, what it's all about. So we've been going, this is our fourth one, I think. Pretty sure it's our fourth. August we started. And Speaker's Corner is a monthly Projectkin event. And we invite speakers along to jump up on our virtual soapbox and tell a story to family historians or anyone who wants to hear. Hi, Diane. Diane was a speaker just a month or so ago. And Dr. Mary Marshall, hello, it's so great to have you here. So Speaker's Corner is all about the storytelling. So Kathy and Kyla will give you a preview to their stories coming up later in the week. So I might just go over to Kathy first. Kathy, I said she is Kathy from Kathy's Corner, and also Kathy from Kathy's Coaching now. And Kathy's wearing a different hat today. Normally she's here to tell us all about our photos and how to keep them going and alive and not get lost, and filing them, archiving them, and how to repair them. But today Kathy is telling us a story from her family history. So over to you, Kathy. Tell us your story or a preview to your story.
Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer. I'm a little nervous, you'd be surprised, because I like to talk a lot, because this is the first time I've ever told a story in a venue such as this. I've not written my family stories out, and I'm a little intimidated in the genealogy community because I'm just a baby genealogist right now, trying to research my family history, and most of my interest in it has evolved from looking at finding old family photos and getting them digitized and to look at. And I thought with the theme about not tragedies but trials and resilience of our ancestors. And it got me thinking about my grandmother. And largely because, as mentioned before, she was old when she always seemed like an old lady to me. I'm kind of thinking now she wasn't that old at the time. She was probably only in her 50s, but she seemed old anyway. So my grandmother was born in England, in Usworth colony, and in Usworth, Durham. And I need anyone that is British to correct me on the pronunciation. I've called it Usworth for my whole life, and now I checked in how to pronounce things, and it's Usworth, but it's Usworth.
Yeah.
So anyone that wants to come Thursday and tell me how to pronounce it correctly, I'd be more than happy. It was a mining town. It's in County Durham. It's a very big mining area. And she was born in 1898, and she was the second youngest of 10 children. So a big family. I was just looking at her birth certificate, and it appears she may have been born at home because it had an actual street address as opposed to a hospital listed. And so she had, so I started thinking about her family, and I've never paid a lot of attention to it. And I know bits and pieces of the stories, but I thought, as I started to look at it, I went, so she had two brothers who were in the army in World War I, and one of her brothers was killed at Gallipoli in World War I. So she was born in 1898, and he was killed during World War I. She would have still been young and at home when her brother was killed and never came back. He's buried at a big monument in Gallipoli. He would never have come home. And I thought, wow, that was probably a lot for someone very young. another one of her brothers, the brother closest in age to her, was taken prisoner in World War I and held, I don't know where, that's research on the table to be done, but he was held prisoner during the war. And when he came home, the only thing they ever talked about was he wasn't quite right when he came back. And he'd have nightmares and rattle the beds and everything, which we call that now, he had bad PSTD, but PTSD. So that would be, again, something that she would still be at home when all this happened. I thought, wow, that was a lot when you were just a young teenager. She married my grandfather, who was a coal miner. She was from a family of coal miners, and he was a coal miner as well. And she married him in 1921. And their first son was born in 1921, who they lost at 3 weeks old. And I don't know, we haven't been able to track down records to find out what he died of, but obviously he was only 3 weeks old, so something traumatic from the birth time. And then their second son, born in England, died at the age of 1.5 after surgery for a hernia. So I thought, wow, then now here's 2 more very traumatic events in her life that happened before they even came to Canada. And so my grandfather always wanted to be a farmer because obviously when they were coal miners, coal mining was not a very healthy work environment back in those days, and lots of people died in the coal mines. So I suspect that was partly of it. But he always dreamed of being a farmer, and I think like the outdoors and everything. And so he somehow convinced my grandmother, who we never ever knew for sure if she really was 100% on board with this become a farmer thing, but they worked on a farm as farmhands for a year. I'm near Barmstone in England, in order to get experience and I guess to be able to write on their immigration documents that they were farmers. So they came to Canada in 1921 not 29, and with their son, one of their first sons who lived, he was 5, and their daughter, who was 4 at the time. So those 2 kids were born in England. So they came with 2 little 5 and a 4-year-old, traveled by ship to Halifax, Nova Scotia. And I'm going to talk more about the ship because I found stuff my aunt, that aunt that was on the ship, wrote in her memories. And then took a train from Halifax to a town called Vermilion, Alberta. And Canada's a pretty big place. And so that was once you came all the way across the ocean to Halifax, which is on the East Coast, they came all the way to the prairies. So it would have been probably at least a couple days on that train. So, and again, I've got some things, more information to share about the ship and the train trip. And they came under something called the British Empire Settlement Act of 1922, which I thought, wow, there's something in history that's related to my family. Like they weren't just immigrants; they came under this. So the British Empire Settlement Act was something the British government passed, where they were encouraging immigrants, British people from in the domain of Britain, the whole English United Kingdom, to emigrate to what used to be their colonies, but to all lands. And Canada was still a British possession at that point. And so they had this act to encourage people to immigrate to countries to help settle the countries and also to help with the unemployment after the war in the First World War in Britain. So it was passed in 1922, and they came under that act. That was how they came to Canada and settled on what was then in the west of Canada. A lot of the land was owned by what was formerly Rupert's land, was owned by the Hudson's Bay Company, which evolved over many, many years into a department store. But it has started out as they were one of the people the Hudson's Bay is famous for exploration of Canada and setting up all the forts in remote areas throughout history. And so then they had all this land. The government ceded a bunch of land to the Hudson's Bay Company. So they were given a quote unquote farm by the Hudson's Bay Company. And I guess in the advertisements, it was a lovely little farm, had a nice white picket fence and a beautiful house with curtains in the windows. And it was also the Canadian Pacific Railway was involved in providing funding, and they would have provided, obviously, the transportation. And so they arrived here, and they didn't get the farm they were promised. But they arrived on their farm near a place called Borradaille, which was in fact unbroken land. And there was nothing. It was just like, here's a chunk of land that might have trees cut off, and that was it. It had a house, a barn, a well, and an outhouse. And as I said, with this my aunt said there were a few little pieces of furniture that were built out of like boards. The barn was totally unfinished. It was just a building. Nothing was painted. The house was 18 by 22 feet, which I think right now is probably the size of my living room. Yeah. And it had 2 bedrooms and an attic, and that was all. And then the rest, it was one big room. And then they had, the agreement was, which I think was struck when I first found this out years ago, which struck me as fascinating, is that they had to give a share of their crops every year to the Hudson's Bay Company. They didn't own the farm, but that was either sort of the rent or to try and pay the Hudson's Bay Company back. So they had to immediately give away a third of their crop, which in the first year was from the farm full of unbroken land. And they had given them a couple horses, and I think they had a cow, and a buggy or a wagon. So it's easier to keep warm. Yes, Diane. So they had encountered many, many hardships over that length of time with, I know they had a neighbor who had been settled there, and he used to drive his cattle over that chunk of land that they were given by the Hudson's Bay. And so he just kept driving his cattle through my grandpa's fields when he planted them. And so and 1929 wasn't a great time to come to the prairies, either in Canada or North America, because there was this big thing called the Great Depression that hit right after, and the Dust Bowl and everything. So it was not a great time to come. And so a lot of difficult times and hardships that they faced. And the second year, my grandfather, he cleared the land by hand. And I've got pictures that I'll show on Thursday. So this is the tip for Thursday, of my grandmother painting the buildings, because none of the buildings were painted. They had to dig their own cellar. It had a door to the cellar in the house, but there was no cellar. So they had to dig out the cellar, and pictures of her painting. My grandfather built all the stalls in there. And so they managed, he had to, Hudson's Bay had arranged for 4 farmers to share a sharp plow, but they were all far apart, and they're like, there wasn't cell phones to phone up and say, hey, can you bring the plow over today? So he ended up, he had a plow that he strapped on his back and dragged behind the horses. So he ended up plowing all the land himself. And then the second year, the other note that I found today in my aunt's writing was they finally had a decent crop that would have been great, and even giving the third away to the Hudson's Bay Company that they'd have to give away. But then it got completely wiped out by a bad hailstorm, which are famous for us around here too. So I piled all those together, and my mom was the first person born in Canada, and she was born in 1931. So the summer after they arrived, it was my mom came along. And then they had another kid in 1935, sorry. And then in 1938, she gave birth to twins, which they did not know she was giving birth to twins until she actually gave birth to them. So I got some more stories to tell about that and things that happened. And then when the World War II started, things were still really bad on the farm. And so my grandfather enlisted in the Canadian military and went away, and he served in the Veterans Guard of Canada. So he wasn't in Europe until after the war. So he wasn't actually fighting anywhere, but he was out on the West Coast guarding our coast from Japan and Germany at one point. And then he was a guard at a German POW camp that's not far from where I live now, that they kept him at. And so she was left alone on the farm with 6 kids, 1 boy and 5 girls, because the 2 boys, the first 2 kids were boys that passed away. And then she had 1 son, and the rest of them were all girls. So very tough times. So it gave me a new appreciation for what she'd been through, and a better understanding of the strength in my aunts than throughout their lives too, as they had a tough time growing up. So I have some cool stories. There was one point where there was a big slough on their property. So I think it actually, from what my aunt's story said, it was her and one of her sisters, probably my mom, had gone down to play by the slough, and a group of natives came up and obviously didn't speak British English at the point, and were gesturing until they went and got my mom and my grandma, and my grandma saying like, go away. And then grandpa came back from wherever he'd been and said, oh no, he said he went and talked to them, and he said they had a little baby and they had no milk and no bread, so he gave them milk and bread, and they just wanted to trap muskrats in the slough. So
Yeah.
but I imagine that from the lady from England coming face to face with natives that you've only ever seen in movies and things was a little bit scary too. So that's a little bit of what we're going to look into on Thursday.
That's really great, Kathy, and strength and resilience right there for sure.
Yes.
Jill has asked where exactly was the family farm?
It was near Borradaille, in Alberta, Canada. I don't know where Jill's from to know how close I'm getting to there. I'll give you on Thursday, I could give you the exact coordinates because we have that. The farm is gone now, but the other place it was closer to, the closest town was Islay, Alberta, Islay, and they took the train to Vermilion, Alberta, and then as I get further into the stories, they eventually settled in Vermilion and were there until they were well into their 80s. So
yeah.
So it's northeastern Alberta.
And Diane says muskrat stew. So maybe we need the recipe for that.
Yes, exactly.
That's great, Kathy. So now we'll go over to Kyla. So Kyla's publication is Root Squad Roundup, and Kyla's a genealogy librarian, if I have that right.
Yes. Yes.
And her publication each week is a must-read for me. I love her tips and her fun that she has there. So over to you, Kyla. How about a preview of your upcoming story?
Stories? Okay. All right. So one of the things that I always try to think about and keep in my mind when I'm doing research, because I didn't do this early on, I made some really big mistakes. But one of the things that I try to keep in my mind is always that it takes two. Right? Wherever I'm doing my research, I always have to remember to research the other family, right? Whoever was the connection. So, the two, I'm going to try to weave together these two stories for you, of my two ancestors that came together. One of them, the first one, is, let's see, the first one is Edwin. His name is Edwin Goodwin. And his family, he was the sixth generation in colonial Connecticut. So his family went very, very far back. And when his grandfather was was Elisha Richards. So he had he heard the story of the Revolutionary War, the escape. His grandmother, sorry. His grandmother was the 11-year-old that went with the family that escaped after the massacre. So she was one of the younger children that escaped. So that was his grandmother. So that's kind of I'm thinking he's hearing some strong stories, right? But he grew up there. So he grew up there in that environment. And then that let me see, hold on. Let me get my numbers right, because this is one of those things that I'm like, okay. He was actually when he was 6 years old, his parents they converted from being Baptists to being Latter-day Saints. So part of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And at this time, there was a lot of persecution in that area. I'm still trying to find some information about what the grandparents thought about this. at the time. But there was a decision made by the church leadership that they needed to move. Basically, the entire church needed to pick up and move, and so they started preparing they called themselves saints. So they started preparing the saints to travel, a big group of them to travel overland, right? But at the very same time, they put together this. They decided to a group of them would sail around Cape Horn, all the way around South America, to California. And so he was 6 years old on that voyage. And it's just an amazing story. There's so many things that have been written about it, and so many accounts of that voyage, and how many things happened on the way. And one of the things that is in every account is that his mother was pregnant. So they had. Let me see. Hold on. Let me count. One. Wait. Let me count. I forgot how many of them there were. 6, 7, 8. I can't remember. There were a lot of them. Anyway, a lot. There were a lot of them. Anyway, and she was pregnant, and there was a big storm, and she fell down the gangplank of the ladder thing, and so that part of the story is in that, in all of the accounts. So now. So I'll kind of go maybe a little bit more into that. I want to talk about, this sounds like a really, really hard thing, which it was absolutely, but there's lots and lots of stories about the things that I think, a lot of details and clues about the trip that I think is what built up their strength and gave them that resilience to go on to to just keep going, right?
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact they didn't have any chance. I mean, any other choice,
Yeah.
right? They had to keep going
Yeah.
because they were on the ship. But yeah, that was the
Yeah.
ship Brooklyn. Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. Indeed. And then so at the very same time, a little bit of a flip side, over in England, was the other side, and that was a little girl named Anna. And Anna's mother passed away when just a few months after she was born. So I'm thinking it didn't really say, but I'm thinking complications of childbirth and so on. And her father, a few years later, decided to come to the United States as well. And what I think, I'm still trying to iron some of this out, because he bought passage for a lady. So this was 3 years later. He bought passage for another lady and her 2 children, and then they sailed, and then so they sailed from London to New Orleans, and then as a group. So he had also was also a recent convert to the Mormon church, or the LDS church, I guess. And so they also sailed with a group. There were about I forgot to tell you this, but there were 400 of this group from England that sailed to New Orleans. On the Brooklyn, there were approximately 230. It's kind of a little. Some of them were a little iffy. I think 236 saints, and then the crew and a few others. But anyway, so the group that went to New Orleans, actually got on another ship and sailed up the Mississippi. And in the meantime, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what happened, because not some of them got off, and some because they couldn't afford to go on yet, and so they had to get off and work a little while to get provisions and so on. But I am certain that we were on the next ship, which was called the Pride of the West. So that was the next one, and right before they landed in St. Louis, there's one single entry in one of the diaries that says, Sister Harwood died.
Oh. Oh.
And that's it. So I
Yeah.
have no indication that they got married, but
Yeah.
that's my thought. That's what happened there. And then they scattered a bit again to get from St. Louis. There was just a short little voyage that needed to go, that they all needed to get up on. Most of them went on what was called the Saluda, was the name of the boat, and it was very, very old and had some problems with its broilers and exploded. And about half of the people on that ship were lost. So I don't know if my Harwoods were on there or not.
Yeah.
I'm trying to there's a little bitty gap right there. I can't really figure out what happened or if they were there. But we picked them back up again, further up the road where the wagon trains took off. And it is, they didn't all make it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So definitely Dad made it, the older son made it, and then my little Anna made it. I'm not too sure. The other two that he brought that were not his, I can't find them anywhere.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. They did not make it, but anyway, so then big giant wagon train all the way across the plains to Salt Lake City.
Yeah. Wow.
So that's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What a journey.
Yeah.
What a journey. Yeah.
All the way across, and then that's where they met. So kind of a little.
Yeah. 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 Many of our ancestors in Australia came around Cape of Good Hope in to get here too, and that was a really rugged journey around there. You know, the weather could be really, like you said, they had bad weather. The weather could be really bad there, yeah. But it's amazing to think they came all that way.
All the way.
There.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all of the things there's so many things. There's some fun details that I'm going to share with you guys.
Yeah.
I like Kathy said, I like the fun stuff. I know it's really hard.
Yeah.
There were some hard times, but they did their and a lot of times I think that may be the key. Like, is that how we get through the hard stuff? Is by finding our small joys.
Yes, exactly.
Small joy.
Yeah. You know, it's amazing that they were so strong and resilient and so busy and just staying alive and, you know, looking after their kids and that. But they would have had to have had some fun in there a little bit, wouldn't it?
I'll tell you some things. I'll tell you some things that they brought on the journey, and I'm very lucky because there are a lot of good diaries and a lot of good records that were kept in that group and that have survived.
Yeah.
So that's what I got.
Shauna just made a comment. Wow, I went down a voyage rabbit hole last Sunday. I'm trying to find the document I read. Yeah. Those rabbit holes, they can just keep you in there for, can't they? It can take weeks to come out sometimes.
Or years.
Or years. Yeah, exactly. So, that was great. That was great. I'm really looking forward to hearing the rest. Actually, I'm, we're in for a treat on next week when we do Speaker's Corner because these are great stories and, I know I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of them and I'm sure everyone else is too. And you tell them so well, both of you. It's really great. So while we are here having fun doing this, Barbara's in the background having fun, taking notes and sharpening her pencil, doing all that.
Thank you, Barbara.
Yes. Just so you know, there's probably quite a bit of information there and links that Barbara will pop in the notes. But the notes, many will realise, but maybe some don't. When the video's first posted, it won't have the notes. So come back in 10 or 15, 20 minutes and just recheck and the notes will be there. So there will also be a link there to register for Speaker's Corner next Thursday or Friday, and it will have details of times in your time zone. And please don't forget to register because you need the Zoom link. because I often forget to register. So even for my own event, that's the one I usually forget to register for. So yeah, you will. It's a free event, but you will need that Zoom link. And also, I've got a little bit of good news. Speakers Corner for 2026 is completely booked out except for one spot. Yeah, isn't that amazing? People have just put their hand up so quickly. So if you feel that you have a story like to come along and tell, that one spot is in November. So you've got plenty of time to plan it, write it and practice it and change your mind and choose something else and all that. So, but if you feel that way and you would like to come along, just contact me at Tracking Down the Family, or Barbara will have a link down below for any registrations, anyone who wants to be a speaker. So either way, it will get to me. So just before we go, a couple of words about December next month. We're having a special speakers corner, and every guest that has been on from the start, so since August, is coming along, and it's like a little reunion celebration. And they will tell us a 10-minute story about a holiday or Christmas story from their family, whatever they want. Could be food, family, travel, family altercations, because there's sometimes some of those, I'll call them family relationships, because it's not always plain sailing. So there will be too many speakers to have for one session. So we're going to have 2 speakers corners in December on the same day, but one will be Pacific time, one will be Atlantic time. So watch out for that. That's going to be really fun. So yeah, I think that's probably about a good place to finish for this week, and I hope to see everyone who's here come along to Speakers Corner, because you need to hear the rest of those stories. And once again, don't forget to register. And huge thanks to Kyla and Kathy for stepping up and coming along and giving us this preview, and for doing it so well and making it so interesting. So I will see you all at Speakers Corner on Thursday or Friday next week. Thank you for coming.
Sounds good.
Bye. See you later. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.